Thank you for joining us for a Fargo Board of Education regular meeting. It is Tuesday, March 28th, and I will start this meeting by asking you to join us in saying the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Oh, great. Robin made it. You had indicated you might be a little late, and Namal is joining us via phone. So I will look for approval of the agenda. Jim.
I move adoption of the agenda with the addition of the HR addendum that was located at our workstation to be added to item 7B.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. So we'll move on to item number 4, which is our guest presentations and student performance for music in our schools month. We are so thrilled to have our guest presenters tonight. It looks like first up is Patrick Thiel from Music Participation Presentation. Thank you, Patrick.
Let me start by saying thank you for allowing us to join you on this fine January evening. My name is Patrick Thiel, Performing Arts Facilitator for the district, along with Darcy Brandenburg, Kelsey Dragosevich, and music students from Davies and North High Schools. We are proud and honored to join you tonight to highlight Music in Our Schools Month. There is much to celebrate throughout Fargo Public Schools in regard to the robust and enriching music education our students receive. Through general music instruction, choir, hand chimes, orchestra, and folk dance with our over 5,000 elementary students across 19 orchestras, 6 chamber orchestras, 21 concert choirs, 9 select choirs, 13 jazz bands, and 23 concert bands involving over 2,600 middle school and high school students. The music opportunities afforded to our FPN students are immense. These music opportunities and experiences are the driving force in developing our students' 21st century skills, critical thinking, collaboration, communication, and creativity. In fact, singing and playing a musical instrument activates more parts of the brain simultaneously than almost anything we know about. Our district's talented, dedicated, and inspirational music teachers deliver exceptional music experiences to their students day after day, year after year. Just this school year alone, Fargo Public Schools can boast having the ACDA Choral Director of the Year, the NDSTA Orchestra Director of the Year, NBA Citation of Excellence Award winner, Darcy Brandenburg, Outstanding Young Band Director of the Year, Jazz Educator of the Year, Kelsey Dragosevich, and the FPS Teacher of the Year. Our FPS music teachers are truly the best of the best. And simply put, we're grateful to have a school board, collective administrative team, and large community that fully understand how essential a first-rate music education is. It's no wonder Fargo Public Schools has been named a best community for music education for the past 19 years, and every stakeholder in this community has played a vital role in earning that distinction. So at this time, I'll turn it over to some of our music students to hear about what their music experiences have meant to them throughout their education careers.
Hello. Before I begin, I would like to promise you that I am 18 years old despite the color of my hair right now. We had our Fargo Public Schools Theater Festival at South today, so. Now I'd like to ask who here heard a song that they really like in their car on the way to the meeting today? I personally listened to my favorite musical, Hadestown. But that's what the beauty in music is. There are so many different forms and styles that can affect so many different kinds of people. My name is Ethan Blessy. I'm a student from Davies High School, and I've been so lucky to be involved in the Davies band, orchestra, choir, and theater departments. All of these different forms of arts, primarily revolving around music, have been the activities that made me the person I am today. A student who really enjoys going to school, a well-rounded student who feels like he can meet the expectations of the school, and most importantly, a person who is just confident in who he is. I would not be this person if I did not get all these amazing opportunities to work with such great and incredibly to work with such great teachers on an incredibly valuable subject, music. The things that music education in our schools do for students is nothing short of incredible. According to Academy in Cyprus, students who participate in music are more likely to excel in other subjects and collaboration, and they're more likely to stay in school and pursue higher education. It's amazing that this subject can do so much for students, but I can understand why. A main focus of Fargo Public Schools is the 21st century skills: collaboration, critical thinking, creativity, and communication. While these skills have been incorporated into a lot of my classes, and pretty effectively too, there is rarely a focus on all four at the same time. The few exceptions to this would be my music classes, where I use all four skills every single day. The large ensembles that I'm a part of, that's the band and the choir, have one common primary goal, and that is collaborating to make music. We all have to work together to balance our individual volumes, tune to each other, and work to create a common arc or message to every single individual piece. It's what we do every day. In order to do this, we have to clearly and efficiently communicate with other students and our conductors. We have to make sure that we're on the same page while still keeping a high group morale. We also have to think critically while we're playing. Our brain's focusing on many different aspects of the piece, like how much air are we blowing into the horn? What's the fingering for this note? Shoot, I forgot to look at the conductor to make sure that I'm keeping up with the rest of the band. And finally, creativity. That is what music is all about. It's all about us expressing ourselves using a creative outlet. We convey our emotions through pieces we play and the teachers that we are so lucky to have. We get to put our own expression into our pieces. An example of this in every music class at Davies High School would be that every student gets an opportunity to choose and work on their own solo to perform at a contest. We have to learn to be self-sufficient and disciplined enough to take the practice, the art, and therefore the product that we create into our own hands. We get those creative liberties which are so valuable for students' mental health, and it's also a great opportunity for us to develop the skills of creativity and leadership. With no other class that I can think of bringing all four of those skills together in such a cohesive and understandable way, I can confidently say that music has played the biggest role in my personal development of my collaboration, critical thinking, communication, and creativity skills. Finally, and most importantly, music has made me confident in who I am. I am Ethan Blessy. I am a student who loves music with all of his heart, who plays the bassoon, the guitar, and sings, who chooses to involve himself in as many different music classes and activities as he can because that's the primary place at Davies where he truly feels at home. When a student participates in a music class, they always get the same teachers. They always get the same students in their classes. And that makes a world of difference compared to my academic classes. I love my academic teachers and the students in my classes, but if you were to ask me for my favorite teachers at Davies High School, there are no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Mrs. Grandner, Mr. Brandenburg, Mrs. Streggy, the choir and band directors. Some of my best friends are Jacob, Andrew, Brooklyn, Josh, Lauren, Ryan, Sadie, so many of them, and every single one of them I met through a music class. Music classes are not just places to learn new skills, they are places to develop friendships. I could go to any one of my music teachers or fellow music students about anything for two main reasons. One, I know them better than anyone else. I've been in some of my favorite classes with them for up to 4 years in a row. I know them all and they know me. We get along with each other, we appreciate each other, and we really look out for one another. Two, music requires you to open your heart a little bit. It's an emotional art and one that requires a level of trust between you, your teachers, and your peers. Once that level of trust is established, you can not only create beautiful music, but you can also truly trust your teachers and your friends with what's going on in your life, and you can feel confident that you'll be heard and loved. While this can and does apply to sports teams too, not everyone is an athlete, and that's okay. I mean, I don't like to brag, but I did race a 100-meter dash in middle school, and I got a whopping 7th place out of 8, but that's besides the point. The big picture I want to bring home is that I didn't feel home when I was in track or baseball or any other sport that I played. When I joined music, however, I instantly felt at home. I'm not an athlete, but I can proudly call myself a musician. My classmates are my team, and I do not know what I would do without them. Thank you guys so much. And that's the main reason that I do music at Davies. I love the art, but above all, I love the people and the relationships that I've formed along the way. I know that music is being cut from schools all around the country, and I just want to thank every single one of you for giving me this opportunity. The opportunity to enjoy going to school, the opportunity to develop my 21st century skills that I'll use forever, and finally, the opportunity to give me a home at Davies High School. a home that has sheltered me and protected me through plenty of the hard times that come with being a high school student. Once again, on behalf of all the students on behalf of all the students like me around the school district, thank you for keeping music in our schools.
Thank you, Ethan. Next up, we will have a music performance. Oh, no, one more speaker.
Hi, my name is Amni Moosh, and I'm a senior from Fargo North High School. Before we begin, I'd like to thank Fargo Public Schools for their continued support of the arts. I know this means so much to all of the art students. I personally couldn't picture my life without going to choir in the morning and band in the afternoon. Exploring the arts with the amazing staff Fargo North High has given me the opportunity to discover my passions and decide what I'd like to do with my life. My teachers' continued support and advice has taught me so many critical thinking and life skills like resilience, perseverance, and dedication. I wouldn't be in a place of confidence and success if it weren't for all the opportunities that FPS continues to provide, like EDC Solo and Ensemble Festival, All-State, and as Ethan mentioned, One Act Festival. Thank you for all your support.
Hi, I'm Emma Rader, a senior at Fargo North. Again, I'd like to thank you all for having us today. We'll be playing a piece called Traffic Jam by Ricky Lombardo, which is a cross-band ensemble, meaning we have students from every band here at North, and it highlights different artistic and playing abilities. We utilize time outside of class during our Spartan period to give high-achieving underclassmen a chance to play with upperclassmen. Additionally, as a senior, this gave me an opportunity to practice my leadership skills in an ensemble. Thank you again for supporting the arts at FPS.
Thank you both for being here. I think I was just so excited to get to the performance. So now is it time? It's time. Okay, great. That was excellent. We'll let them get set up for one more performance.
Hello, my name is Darcy Brandenburg. I'm one. Hello, my name is Darcy Brandenburg, and I'm one of the band directors at Davies High School. Today, we're going to be playing a piece for you called Baroque in Blue by Claude Bowling, and I wanted to take a moment to introduce these students in front of you. On the bass, we have Karina Repinat. She's a track team member, swim team member, and just got back as the principal bassist of the All-State Orchestra. Oh, and she's a sophomore. On the flute, we have Evie Geiger, track team member, and literally plays all the instruments. On the drums, we have Jacob Hansen, senior heading to Concordia for music education in the fall. He traveled to Carnegie Hall this past February to perform. And then on the keys, we have Adam Brockman, track team member and classical and jazz pianist. And you're going to get to hear some sweet licks from him. Hit it, Adam.
That was incredible. Thank you all so much for taking time to be here. Before we let them pack up, do any board members have comments or questions? I'll start, if that's okay. As someone who personally has a child who benefits from this program, it really means a lot. And Ethan, your comments especially ring true. So thank you for the bravery to get up here and speak to us tonight. That was very cool. And I just want to point out that I was the parent chaperone for the Davies trip, and we saw Hadestown together in New York City. So I need to get that soundtrack. Okay, other board members have questions or comments? Katie?
I do. I can't remember the pianist. What was your name again? Adam, I'm wondering if your parents had to make you play piano or if you did this voluntarily.
So when I started piano in halfway through kindergarten, I didn't enjoy it at all. But then in about 6th grade, once I got a new teacher who started letting me play pieces I enjoyed, then I started really liking it, and I took the time on my own to practice and get better.
So you're saying that it's worth sticking it out? Like if kids want to quit and parents are feeling like they want to give up, you say stick to it?
I think if the kids want to quit, they're playing the wrong pieces. And
Oh,
pieces that they enjoy
that's
instead.
great. Okay, wonderful. That's insightful. And then I actually had a question for Beatrix. Would you be willing to answer a question? I'm curious what the name of your instrument is, and could you speak into the microphone up here? And I'm assuming you played a different instrument before that one, so like how did you transition to whatever that is?
It's a bass flute, so it has the same fingering as a flute. It's just the way you have to form your mouth is a bit different. The transition isn't too bad.
Nice.
It's just it's odd.
It was a very beautiful sound. Thank you. And then the last thing I was going to say, there doesn't have to be a comma, is I'm wondering if Mr. Brandenburg, with that last name, did you have any other career options, or were you just bound to be a musician?
Either that or like some type of German professional
Okay.
or something.
Got it.
I chose musician.
Okay. Thank you very much, all of you, for being here.
Other board members? Nikki?
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. Thank you, all of you. I just love this month when we get to hear from our students. I used to play flute and electric bass and piano and different things, but I love seeing all the flutes up here because that's just amazing. But I loved hearing what you all had to share when you stepped up to the mic and shared about the impact that music has had on you, because I was one of those kids and I appreciated having that outlet. And even today, music is kind of my everything. So thank you for sharing your talents with us. And you guys are amazing.
I have a question.
Namal,
Hello?
did you have a question? Yes.
Sorry. Well, it's not a question. I just want to say I enjoy the performances. Seriously, that was outstanding, and I'm just so proud of all of you guys. I feel bad not being there watching you all perform, but I can tell you this, I have my daughter, she does go to Davies, and she plays cello. So it's just literally, it hit my heart. I mean, y'all performed beautifully. I'm not gonna lie. For those of you who do not know, music education is so crucial in our school system because it's literally like it stimulates the brain development in our children. Not only on top of that, too, when you actually look at it, there are just so many things, so many incredible things that the music can do in a way that it connects with other people, the way that integrate in many different subjects that are really truly important. It's not only on top of that too, it teaches discipline to our kids and is truly help them manage stress release because this is so crucial. And that's what I see from my own daughter and the way that I see you all perform today. I'm just honored to be in this board watching you all perform because I am just I'm at high here. So thank you.
Thank you for those comments, Neema. Other board members? I'm like waiting for Seth and
Yeah.
Robin. Okay.
I'm just. I'll go
Seth.
before Seth. And
Go
end
for
up,
it.
we'll end with the musician. I'm the opposite. All right. I have no musical bones in my body, um, but I appreciate the music you guys played nonetheless. That was absolutely wonderful. The only thing I wanted to add is I appreciate Jacob. Right. Good choice going to Concordia. The rest of you should also consider that.
Seth.
Well done. That was great. As a musician myself, I know that feeling that you just had performing. There's no other feeling in the world quite like it. And I want to say props to you. That was a lot of notes, and I didn't see you look at your music one time, one time. So I know you worked on that a lot. But yeah, well done. This is obviously as a musician, this is my favorite month to be a board member because we get to see these performances from our students, and it just validates how much we care as a district from our music programs, and it makes me really proud to serve a district that values this as much as we do. And so thank you for your performance, and I appreciate it. And if you stick with it, there's going to be a lot of joy coming your way the rest of your life. So thank you.
Melissa.
Yeah, thank you so much to everyone. This was an absolute treat. And both of my kids are in music at Fargo Public Schools, and I was as too. And it's just neat to see your performances. You're absolutely incredible. And then one shout out to Ethan. You were an absolutely outstanding lawyer in Chicago. That was really a treat. So I am like currently blown away by all of the talent in our district. So thank you so much for sharing that with us tonight.
Robin.
Well, I think might be the only person that didn't say anything, but I'm going to agree with everything Greg said. I'm not musical, but I'm married to a musician, and this wonderful keyboard player has spent many lessons in my house learning jazz because he was outstanding classical player, and he said he wanted to learn jazz. Great job going to Concordia. Yes, my husband teaches there, and also on the bassoon. So I'm speaking vicariously here. But there is a future in music, and this is such a joy to hear from all of you and the growth that you experience, but also the teachers that you have dedicate so much of their personal time to what you do and make connections in their communities. And that's something I think we should also be very thankful for. We're so proud of you in Fargo Public Schools, and we're so proud of our musical programs. So I'll stop talking before you start crying, but thank you guys for being here tonight.
Thank you. Couldn't have said it better myself. Well, if there aren't other comments or questions, we're going to take a 5-minute break so they can get everything set up. And thank you again so much for being here. Okay, thank you again. We will resume our meeting. Portion of our agenda. At this time, the board will hear comments from the public. We ask that each speaker who has signed up to address the board state their name and home school district for the record. Speakers must refrain from using this forum to criticize or complain about a specific employee or student by name. Vulgar or profane language will not be tolerated. The board is interested in your comments and we will listen carefully, but is not obligated to respond to or debate issues in this forum. This evening, each speaker will be allotted a maximum of 5 minutes. Upon conclusion of the allotted time, a chime will sound and the speaker is asked to conclude. If necessary, a final chime will sound 15 seconds later, signifying the end of the speaker's time at the podium. We have 3 speakers signed up this evening, and I will now call our first speaker to the podium, Devin Stachinsky. Thanks for being here, Devin.
Devin Stachinsky, HMR. Boy, them band kids bring me back. That brings back good memories. They did a great job. But I digress. Let's get down to brass tacks. First things first, I wish there was a way that this entity could show the camera for both the person addressing the board and the board itself, because some of you have really terrible poker faces. This, in conjunction with the last meeting, for sure. But I'd like to address the main thrust of what I came to talk about tonight. And that's Memo 96. Now, I went through this memo quite thoroughly, and I don't understand most of it. Mostly under the results and the recommendation for it. Now, when I read these 2 statements, specifically the results, all Fargo public school environments are physically safe and psychologically supportive for students and adults. I'm not entirely sure what metrics you're actually using for that. When teachers are still getting abused, you have groups of students fighting other groups of students, resulting in a kid getting jumped at the mall by one of the groups. You had all the teachers you had to let go in the last 12 months. So I don't know exactly how you can say that that result is accurate. And then the recommendation, which Dr. Gandhi should be the politician, and really, for the selected weasel words used, that the 2022-2023 internal report for monitoring strategic initiative 2 be approved as provided and accept the superintendent's certification that the strategic 2 result was achieved or reasonable progress has been made. Now, the recommendation cannot be or reasonable progress has been made if the result is a definitive statement of all Fargo public school environments are physically safe and psychologically supportive for students and adults. You can't have a absolute definitive and then weasel words to say, yeah, we got close enough. What kind of message does that send to all the parents? Yeah, we got close enough for this to approve it and put it in the file. However, knowing how this board operates, I have a sneaking suspicion that this will just get rubber stamped and put in the file like everything else that Dr. Gandhi gives you. So that's all I've got. Thanks.
Thank you. Speaker number 2 this evening is Matt Kozak. Welcome, Matt.
Hello. First, I just want to say thank you guys for taking action to amend the superintendent review last week. And thank you, President Newman, for trying to clarify Hispanic versus Latino. I do appreciate that. After that meeting, it was pretty clear that we had a defined set of students that were underperforming. So I submitted an open records request for the data used, and I could not find, because I couldn't find Spanish speaking as a definition on the Fargo Public website. So I was looking for the data just to see how we determined Spanish speaking students were underperforming. It was recommended that I reach out to Board Member Day for the data because data wasn't officially provided through that way to you guys. So I did. Board Member Day, she referred me to the student data set on the ND Insights website, and then she told me to look under the Hispanic students. But when you asked her, Dr. Newman, if it was Hispanic students or Latino, she said Spanish speaking. By approving the language that you guys did, you might have inadvertently added some systemic racism that could be in there, because now anyone who's going to read the performance review in history or whatever, they'll see Spanish speaking on that form and then have to do the mental gymnastics to change it to Hispanic. Not all, I know it sounds like nitpicky here, but like not all Spanish speakers are Hispanic. Not all Hispanics speak Spanish. Fargo Public Schools offers 5 courses of Spanish, 1B, 2, 3, 4. For 4 in the catalog, it says you have to be proficient in Spanish. So are all of those students that are taking Spanish 4 that were qualified to go, are they the underperforming students? Would they be counted as those underperforming students in the language that was in that superintendent's review? Aside from like the ethical and legal issue too of also grading Dr. Gandhi or evaluating Dr. Gandhi on a measure that is not tracked. You guys don't track it, it's not a definition. But telling him that he has a weakness of underperforming Spanish speaking students, that's kind of not fair. But what I'm asking is for, I guess, to go back and maybe make a motion or evaluate or somehow change that language to what she meant was Hispanic, because that's the data set that's there. I think that's fair to Dr. Gandhi. I think that's fair to be in line with the diversity, equity, and inclusion statement or policies. I know that department's going away. We're getting rid of that, and it's going to be educational justice, but at least for now it's still there, or maybe till the end of the year. But my whole real point here is, aside from that, is it would have made more sense to say student achievement and growth, like as a weakness, student achievement and growth was underperforming for all students. That's kind of what ND Insights data says. It's not, it doesn't matter the race or the ethnicity of someone. There's a lot of underperforming students, it seems like, through that data. And so it made more sense to do that. Because the way it's now reads, if you look at that, it seems like Dr. Gandhi is succeeding with only a certain set of students and doesn't seem to focus on this one set when it's equal across the board. So my ask is that you would go back and change that language to the correct definition that you guys do define as a metric. So thank you.
Thank you for being here. Our final speaker this evening is Jack, is it Batten?
Baten.
Baten, sorry, Jack Baten, welcome.
And say, members of the board, may I speak from here? Just because I am
Well,
terrified to
Oh,
speak in front of
we
people.
don't want you to be terrified, but the people online can't hear you unless you have a microphone. Oh, there, if we could do it that way. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I might collapse. Yeah, I'm kind of the last person who should be talking in front of people because I get extremely scared, but sorry. So I just wanted to talk about, again, I'm Jack Baden. I had 2 kids. One goes to Clara Barton, one Hawthorne. Just wanted to talk about, school shootings and our preparedness. I don't know our exact policy on what goes on with that, just what my kids have told me and what I've read in the emails. But when I go to conferences and I see the doors on the classroom, they're pretty flimsy, so locking that door, I don't think it keep someone out for very long. I think I could kick the door open myself let alone with a gun. My point is, this is a great state. We got great people here. We don't expect anything like that to happen. And our police department, they're awesome. But are we doing enough? Looking at the just doors to the classrooms, I'd say definitely not. I know there's a lot of funding issues, with schools. Everyone's, times are tough. But I would gladly, give 1,000, 2,000. I'd donate money to, help, make our schools more safe. That's all I got.
Thank you for being
Thank
here.
you.
Okay, thank you all. We will move on to our report section of our agenda. Up first is our legislative report, and that is from Board Member Robin Nelson.
Thank you. I want to open by thanking the committee for their unprecedented involvement. In the past, it was expected that I was the one that send all communication and monitor activity, and it gets overwhelming at times, not only workload, but also emotionally. So please know how much I appreciate this committee's report. It was requested that I communicate better and offer more opportunities for involvement, and I'm committed to do that, working on that now. And then thank you for your patience as I learn how our new committee members would like the committee to be facilitated, because this is new for me. So hopefully I'm interpreting what the committee wishes are. And then it was also requested that when committee members are absent or miss part of the meeting, they will be contacted, informed of what occurred and what they missed. And I'm committed to make that happen. So thank you for your patience, and I will do better. As far as individual legislation, boy, it's been a whirlwind, just even on a couple bills. I'm sure that you heard about some of them in the media. The school meal bills are garnering a lot of attention. 1494, what is known as the lunch shaming bill, passed unanimously in the Senate. 1491, the bill that would increase the number of students who would qualify for free lunches, failed in the Senate, 23 to 24. I will say that every legislator, representative, and senator that served the Fargo School District, with the exception of one, did vote in favor of that legislation, and I think it's good that we acknowledge them. And then, so story's not over. So apparently today, and I'm getting bits and pieces of this, maybe you heard it in the news, it was brought back to the floor to be reconsidered by Senator Judy Lee. And it failed by a margin of 20 to 27. So it failed with a wider margin. Here's the tricky part, though. It failed by a voice vote. So that means they don't put their names on the board. So we're not quite sure who voted what. So I don't know how that whole process works, but that's the latest thing that I know. I was doing some other things, so I didn't have a chance to watch it. 1532, what is being called the school voucher bill, was heard in Senate Appropriations and Senate Ed this morning. They told us it's likely to receive work in committee next week. And then something that went through, and I didn't get a lot of chance to watch it, the 2254, the TSI and PSI schools, a bill that would withhold funding and remove and reassign personnel just due to what we deem as a skewed rating system, did receive a due pass from committee. So we'll be watching that one closely. Boy, there's just lots of stuff are happening really quickly. A lot of the funding bills are coming up, and I'm trying to do the best that I can to communicate that with you. And I hope I'm meeting your expectations. So other than that, I'll just leave it at that for our legislative report. So.
Thank you, Robin. I think we all appreciate how much you're doing, and thank you to the entire GAC committee. Our next report this evening is for FEA report, and I see Kim here. Thanks for joining us, Kim Rieger.
Good evening. Not too much to say tonight. Our negotiations has been going pleasantly well. I feel our new process is working to the benefit of both sides, and progress is being made in a very positive manner. The commitment to try to complete this negotiations by June as we are working till 9 p.m. every time we meet. So it's exhausting, but really pleasant to see how well it's going. FEA is also in full support of changes to EL 14 that I noticed Greg proposed in memo 92 on the monitoring report. And I'm very encouraged to hear what's been happening in legislation for funding and hope the school board will feel free to collaborate with FEA to get the best for our district and our students. And looking ahead, if you can mark your calendars, I'll bring a formal invitation, but May 15th at Rowe Farm will be our FEA retirement social. So, thank you.
Thank you, Kim, and thank you for all your work on negotiations. Our final report this evening is Superintendent Report, Dr. Gandhi.
Good evening. No major reports today, just a lot of logistical information. If you have questions around NSBA travel or even, I think there's some documents or things that have been passed out today, feel free to reach out to me or Anne Marie, but I know that we have our conference this week and looking forward to that.
Thank you very much. Okay, with that, I will look for approval of the consent agenda. Jim.
I move adoption of the consent agenda as provided in our packet with the addition of the HR addendum.
Second.
Okay, moved by Jim, seconded by Nikki. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. We'll move on to our business section of our agenda. We have 4 items this evening.
President Newman, can you confirm that Board Member Day is still on and that she voted in that one?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You voted a yes. Okay, thank you. Technology. Okay, so first item under business is our positive school culture and safety monitoring. This comes to us in memo number 96. And it's presented to us by 4 different people. I'm not sure who's going to. Okay, we'll start with Dr. Gandhi. Thank you.
Thank you. I will wait until I get the, oh, there we go. Thank you. Sorry. Technology's thinking. There we go. So this evening you have Strategic Initiative 2, the results monitoring report that has been provided to you. As most of the board knows, this is the first year of our refreshed strategic plan. So we've only monitored 1 results report to date. That has been our strategic initiative focused on engagement and experience in co-curricular activities. So now we're approaching kind of the time of the year for results monitoring that we are going to hit monitoring some of the bigger, broader results that have a wide variety of comprehensive data sets. Part of our goal is to also use the monitoring process to, if there are areas of improvement in how we're delivering that information to the board or looking at the pieces that we are monitoring, I think we should definitely address some of those pieces as well. So I want to first commend Board Member Greg Clark that kind of had reached out to us as well and said, like, based on the written report that was provided, he had some questions which I thought were very legitimate questions about what is some of the metrics or the evidence that we're providing specific to the second analysis piece on ensuring like physical safety for our building as well. We will provide that information to you. We didn't have the time to update
the written report that was already published at that time after him and I had that conversation. So Missy will kind of provide some of that information to you as well. But if there's more that we could do in terms of the result monitoring, please let us know. So we'll provide so we can kind of move forward. Our goal with the strategic plan is also to make sure that we as an organization are looking at things holistically, so we can take a look at the impact of where we're spending our time, energy, and resources, and its impact on students, not trying to achieve any one metric or one data point at one point in time. And that's kind of part of our goal as our strategic initiative too. So I'll kick off of everything that entails for our strategic initiative 2, and then hand it over to Missy, and then she'll hand it over to Dr. Jen Sar that will kind of talk through a little bit of where we are as a district as well. So when I just look at our strategic plan dashboard, our strategic initiative 2 compared is, sorry, about 21% completion, but really breaking it down to all of the individual pieces that we're looking at. Our strategic plan is 5 to 7 year plan, and for each of the individual pieces that we as a district have committed to in terms of actions, goals that we're trying to achieve, we're about 15% completion. Our strategic plan, as we know when we defined it, get to it, really said the ultimate measure for this board to systemically evaluate this strategic initiative on positive school culture and safety is to hit this result. This result is making sure that all Fargo Public Schools environments are physically and psychologically supportive for our students and staff. When we had our board work session this past year, the board had said that for monitoring this result, they wanted an indication or an analysis of 3 separate data sets. One was an analysis of our student support services offered by utilizing student services are offered, utilized, and outcomes, analyzing our school district safety and emergency management procedures, practices, and outcomes, and then also analyzing our Cognia climate and culture survey. For the purpose of consistency and just the template that we're giving you, we're defining analysis as an indication of what are the key accomplishments, what are some challenges that we've had, and what are our next steps. If that needs to change, please let us know so we can update that template accordingly as well. I think administration, and Missy might be able to talk to this as well, might recommend down the road this second indicator on district safety and emergency management procedures and practice oftentimes can be rolled into one of these other pieces, or it might not need to be a standalone indicator. This is one of the pieces that we didn't include a lot of information on. Missy will provide high-level information on what we're doing to make our buildings physically safe, but to some level, we're also not going to provide more detailed information on external threat measures that we're putting in place, just because we don't want to talk about openly the safety measures that we're putting against external safety when it comes to physical safety of our students and staff as well. But we will provide high-level information and include that moving forward. Our goal as a district is to make sure that everything that we do is focused on achieving these results and providing an analysis of these key components on an annual basis. So what we do is we create an operational plan that has a series of goals or action items that we want to achieve that the board approves at the fall to make sure that they're aligned to where we're trying to get to. Within those operational plans, we might have like different metrics that we choose that we want to use or look at for our own growth and development, or even provide up to the board as well. The goal here is to show that there's so many competing priorities that we have as a district that we can click any of these data points and talk about it for an hour, but that doesn't really benefit our students because yeah, we might make growth on that one data point, but we have to holistically take a look and say, the work that we're doing where you're spending the time, is that really helping make an overall impact of getting to our big broad goal of this school environment of being physically and psychologically supportive for our students? We're not going to hit 100%. We know that. That's our goal, but we know that there's a lot that impacts child development. There's a lot that impacts schools. And our goal is to make sure that we're using our resources in the best way. That's also why the set of guiding questions will be provided to board members to utilize if you'd like to, at your discretion moving forward, because we want to know that the data that we're providing you, hold us accountable to why did you pick this data set for monitoring this result. Give us more analysis on why this is working or why that's not. And most importantly, I think the most important question that you can ask administration and that we should be asking is, what are we doing differently for the students that are not benefiting from our actions? And who are those students and what are we doing to track that data, and then also make sure that we're doing something different so then we as a system can keep moving forward as well. That's the reason that we kind of have developed this framework of becoming a learning organization and utilizing kind of this tool to communicate how we're going to be monitoring our strategic plan, but also making sure that we're aligning our budget, our operational plan, and all of the work that we do as well to that. So with that being said, I will hand it over to Missy, who's going to first briefly just talk about what are some of the pieces that are not in the written report, but that gives us reason to believe that based on our policy governance threshold of making reasonable progress towards achieving this result, we do feel that we could certify that we're there based on analyzing our school district safety and emergency management procedures that we probably should have written in there. We didn't, but we can go back and update it as well if that's something that we want to do.
I'll just have to ask Bill, are we showing the presentation off that computer or off of mine? Okay, we'll let Jen put it up then, and we can start there. Okay, so we're starting off with one of the strategic pieces was the Cognia Climate and Culture Survey. So in your packet that you have on this, and I'm going to give you just a little history. In 1819, at that point or before, all buildings gave their own survey. And so every building could kind of check the culture of their building through their own survey. That year, we had a question that came from the public or the board, I don't remember, and they asked, could we summarize it? And it was really difficult to summarize 23 different buildings surveys. So we tried to find a tool that would allow us to give the same survey to everyone, parents, students, and staff, that had some relationship between the three. And part of Cognia that we do in the state of North Dakota had a survey that we could use called Climate and Culture. What we liked about it was part of what we have with the state. When you use that tool, you send it out as a district level, but every building gets their own data, because if you pick the building you're taking the survey from. So it allows buildings to still use the data for their improvement planning, but it also allows the district to get a snapshot across the district. We wanted to give it in 1920, our first time. COVID started, and we were only a week into putting it out publicly. We had to cancel. So we didn't get any data. One thing that is hard is surveys. There's a lot of surveys that go on in education. So teaching and learning, we decided we'd give it every other year. So last spring is the first year we did the full survey. And that's the data you have in front of you today. So when we look at who takes the survey, we ended up having about 6,000 people total take the survey. That was just 6,000 parents, I should say. I lied to you. I got to read my own chart. 1,000 staff, 6,000 students, and 1,860 parents, guardians, who took the survey, and then I broke it down by level below there for students. It is only given to students in grades 3 through 5. Information on the survey, what happens on this survey, and we did not make the questions. One thing that we have the opportunity to do on this survey is we can add questions to it. So that's something we would love feedback on if there are some other indicators we'd like. And so I just highlighted one of, like we said, the accomplishments was that overall, what we're seeing is people feel supported and have positive relationships in our schools. And that came out with parents, staff, and students as we went forward. One of the challenges that I thought was interesting, and that is worth probably us just asking more questions about, is that our staff and our students all, it rate pretty high, feel tired at school. Now, I don't think that's uncommon, but it is interesting for something for us to look at. The piece that also is interesting, regardless of how small it is we do have staff and students that feel angry, lonely, and afraid. And so that's always something for us to look into as we're wrapping around to support our students and staff as we go forward. So when we talk about the next steps, we'll give the survey again next year. Cognia does not give you like national norms on the survey, so you don't have a comparison. I did call them last year to ask about it. They really want you to use your own data as your baseline
and then compare to it as you look at going forward. But I think it really plays into some of the work and studying we've been doing around relationships and supporting the social emotional pieces with our students. So I think we have some more questions to ask, looking at our overall teaching and learning long-term plan. But any questions on the Cognia?
I just have a question about, were the words used to describe like caring, honest, fun, was that supplied or was it like a fill?
It was supplied. Yep. So they give you a list of words and they say, please choose the 4 that best represent how you feel.
Robin, did you have a question?
I do. I have a question about how this compares to some of the components of the YRBS. Are there some duplicates in there?
I might need a little help either from Jen or Bob.
Dr. Gandhi?
So the YRBS survey really looks more at some of the factors that may impact our students with either positive or negative choices that they make as an individual. This survey is more looking at the specific climate and culture of a building. So what is that feeling tone that that student gets? What are some of the traditions that happen in that building? And then how does that impact that student's well-being when they're there? Where the YRBS is more individualized choices that a student is making, and then how that data can be used in some of our coursework in the system.
Did you have something to add, Dr. Gandhi?
Yeah, this will still be a little bit of a stretch, but a couple of years ago, a coalition of just stakeholders focused on child development in our community started a coalition called Level Up. And Level Up's purpose was really to say, okay, how can we extrapolate the survey data from YRBS to be on the preventative end of what are some of the things that we could do to not have students show or go towards that more at-risk behaviors or some of those pieces that cause that at-risk behavior. At that point in time, there was a metric that was developed that was a compilation of a couple of pieces, and it was called a student social capital index. And the higher the student social capital index, the lower their chances are of committing or wanting to participate in the at-risk youth behaviors that the YRBS survey analyzes. The biggest indication to that, to increasing your social capital index, was having a sense of belonging or having something that you're tied into during the school day or after the school activities. So similar to what you spoke of at music today, that would be an example of that. If you feel that connectivity to your school outside of academics, your social capital index is going to go higher. It can be to an activity, but can also be to an individual in the school, an adult, or a peer-to-peer as well. And that's going to reduce your youth risk behavior. So really, not a direct correlation to the climate survey, but it would be the things around sense of belonging. I feel like I have a sense of purpose at school. I feel like I'm connected to someone. Those would be the pieces that could potentially translate or extrapolate that data.
Yes, thank you for that. I think you answered my question. When I initially looked at this, my question was, how does Fargo public schools kind of match up nationally? But that's not an option, it sounds like. Do we know if other districts in the state or the area are using this tool, or is it unique to Fargo?
I did ask Cognia, and they said I would have to ask, reach
Okay.
back out to the schools. They won't tell us who also does it, but they do provide one sample district that they have some results that I was able to look at. So I did get a white paper from them to look at how we use the data.
And if I understood you correctly, it's almost like this then is the baseline.
Right.
Because of COVID interruptions, we will now, so really there's no comparison at this point. This is like step one, kind of.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm interested in what questions we might want to add going forward, coming from administration or the board, just the need that we need to fill in for the uniqueness of our area. So I'll be interested in that going forward. Yes, Katie.
I'm wondering, does this survey collect any other like demographic info, or are you in sports or activities? So like when we're saying, students are tired or angry or lonely, do we see like breakdowns by gender or kids in different, like if they're in sports or if they're in music or?
So I think we can do gender. I'm going to have to double check on ethnicity in the tool itself. I guess the piece that I need to know from them is they have like how they answered the questions, I can segregate some information out. But what I want to know is, can I get the raw data? And so I don't have that answer yet, but if we add questions, then we might have to add how we want to sort it too as a question. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I could see it being really tricky to figure out why people are feeling this way if we don't know like who they are or kind of what the trends are in
A
those.
principal concern is that it's really nice, right, that it's a link. Yeah, hit the link, you can take it on your phone, it works really well. But what we want to know, are we reaching all the different families we have?
That's true too,
So
yeah.
that is a question they asked. Do we ever consider doing an oral interview with a family and filling it out? And I thought those were good questions.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions, comments from board members? Greg?
Yeah, I guess kind of going off of what Tracy said about like thinking about questions that we could add, which is really awesome. Most surveys that you don't own don't allow you to do that, so that's really really cool. But I guess my question for administration is, I guess how well do you feel that this survey gets to the question of like culture and climate within our schools? Do you feel like it's in its present state, before we can add stuff? Do we think it's a good measurement of climate and culture? Like, I'll be the first to acknowledge that that is a very difficult thing to measure with data. So like, if you were to say a resounding yes, I don't know if anyone would believe you, but like it like knowing the limitations of what we're trying to measure is something that's difficult to measure. Do you feel like it does a decent job at it?
Great question. Dr. Gandhi?
I might try a board meeting first and actually have 4 people answer this question, going from me to Dr. Gross to Missy to Jen, because I think I don't know how to answer that question in singularity, because like I look at this climate and culture survey as one piece of data in compilation to a lot of what's going to be presented today on student supports as well. It depends on how you want to use that data. So I'll ask Dr. Gross first, because we try to, at least in our district, which a lot of districts don't, so that's what makes comparison hard. We try to have a standard definition of what's culture and what is climate, and try to get individuals to stick to those 2 definitions, so we know for practices what constitutes what, but that doesn't always mean that the survey respondent is viewing those same definitions. Secondly, I'll ask Missy to maybe share a little bit on the conversation that we had earlier today on just maybe some concerns with the family structures that might be taking the survey. Like, I don't know if some of our most marginalized or our lowest representative groups are the active participants on this survey, both either from the student lens or from the parent lens either. So that's something that we want to dive a little bit deeper into. And then I'll ask Jen to maybe kind of summarize with some of the other data points that we're looking at in conjunction with this. So can this be paired with something else? So I don't think in isolation this gives us much, because some of those concerns, but I don't know how our SWIFTs or counselors or some of the other individuals are using this data along with the other data points that they have. But maybe start with the definition of how we're trying to separate culture and climate.
So I think as a Fargo Public Schools, we've had the conversation, climate and culture, and a lot of times we think of that as 2 different words meaning the exact same thing. But really what we've defined them as, the climate is the feeling tone of that building. When I walk into that building, how do I feel? Do I feel safe? Do I feel welcome? Do I feel that there are people who want me to be in that facility? Culture, a lot of times, are the traditions, the histories, the things that happen within a building. Some of the activities, the programs, all of those things that also build to a strong sense of community. So I think both of them are needed when we talk about the feeling tone of a building, but I do think they have 2 different definitions. At least that's the way we've defined them. And then when it comes to this survey, I think in the past, when it was in 2018-19, when every building was doing their own survey to look at that data. The difficulty there was the validity and the reliability of that data, and would it be replicated from site to site? So one thing we did go and look for is a survey, at least that was, according to statistical analysis, valid and reliable, and that's where we went to this survey. I would answer the question, does it exactly connect to what we want? Probably not, but it does give us a good sense of where we are, and especially as we look at this year being the baseline, the next time we give that same survey, we'll be able to see where we have grown and other areas that we need to take a look at as a system.
I agree with Bob. I think that, one, I have called Cogni a couple times saying, whether it's this survey or the engagement survey that the state requires, how do we leverage the tool in our improvement planning? And for this survey, they said we really need another data set. So we'll need to give it again to look at, to go forward. But I do think we should leverage being able to create some of our own questions for the survey we give next school year. So that we can apply it to our school improvement plans and our district plan.
I just have a logistical question, and then Jim, is a person able to take this more than once? I'm thinking of like parents who are also teachers in our district, or even for myself, I might answer the questions different as a parent versus being in the school board.
Yeah, so each building, when they sent it out, well, you get to change the building, you know what I mean? So you get to pick. So if you have 3 kids, you can take it 3 times, but we wouldn't expect, we also understand if no one wanted to do it 3 times.
No, I'm actually
It's
glad
very
there's that
short.
option, because I think it gives you a diverse.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, Jim.
I think I've heard a couple of times the suggestion, if we had any questions that we'd like to add to the survey, it would really help me to see the survey so I knew which questions were already on it, and then I might have some to give you.
I will give that to Dr. Gandhi.
I think it came to me as a parent, so I think that's all I know. Sorry.
Me neither.
Maybe a parent, but they still didn't get to me.
Other questions, or I don't know, Dr. Chinsar, did you want to
I was
chime
just,
in?
Yeah,
or-
I was just going to follow up on the
Please do.
what are some other pieces that maybe we use in addition to the survey. So I think one thing that's important to remember is that the Climate and Culture Survey is just that, right? It's a survey, so it's always measuring one's perception as they're taking it, but it's also then the perception of the viewer and the value that they place on the results as well. And so using that is just one of those tools as we combine it with other data points that we're really trying to pay attention to, like student attendance and student engagement. We're trying to look at that information obviously through Power School, but then also through the learning walks that we're doing out in schools, as well as then we're using the student risk screening scale for internalizing and externalizing behaviors. It's another data point to really think about how are our students engaging at the elementary. At the middle and high school, our counselors do 1-minute meetings where they individually meet with each of our students to ask some of those questions, to also think a little bit deeper or directly and specifically with each individual student. So I appreciate the question, and I think it does become one of the data points in the composite as we try to plan forward for all of our kids.
Great. Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you so much.
Hello? Hi.
Yes, Nimal, did you have a comment?
Yes, so it's not a comment, it is, but on the climax and the culture, there were like for me personally, I was confused at first, like long time ago, until I figured out what it was, like what Dr. Bob said. It was not clear on my end. What is the difference of the climate or the culture? Because sometimes some people will be like, okay, what is it that is the climate? Is it, are we talking about climate change in schools or things like that? I'm not trying to be rude or anything, but they just need to be more of explanation to it. I understand, the climate is the way that the school is, the way that it's just in general, I'm sorry. And then also to the culture, is it just a culture of the student within the Fargo Public Schools, and they have 94 different, and they're all there's like speaking about 94 different languages within our school system, and so on. So, Bob, thank you for clarifying that a little bit. But I just feel like we need to define it a bit more of what this is really about. Because right now there are a couple of parents, they're like wondering, what is the culture and the climate, what is it? Because even the definition is still, they're confused about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yamal, this is Greg. I had a like similar kind of thoughts as I was going through this, like trying to define the two, and I found that a lot of wonderful work had been done, and I found some very, very good definitions on page 14 of our strategic plan. So that might be a good place to start that conversation.
Thank you, Greg. I appreciate it. People are confused about the two words. So I'm just saying it. But for me personally, I totally saw it, and I was relieved. That's why I said, okay, this can work. But at the same time, we need to explain it a bit more. But also, too, I just want to say I appreciate you all for everything that you guys are doing to our Fargo Public Schools and the board. Yeah, amazing. So let's just continue the work that we are doing, and let's define it more of how we can be able to help our community at large. Thank you.
Thank you. I just realized we don't even have a motion for approval. And we've been having all this. Oh, okay. Yes, okay.
So now we'll shift to the school district safety and emergency management procedures, practice and outcomes. And as Dr. Gandhi said, we feel like we will do an update to this just because we feel there are some more details that will help us through that. So with Fargo Public Schools and our emergency management procedures, practices and outcomes, what we have going on is we look at 3 areas. We look at external threats, internal threats, and we look at student escalation incidents where they harm themselves or others with our own students. And when we plan for that in procedures, we have 3 main documents that we use. We have an emergency management plan that gets updated and reviewed. We are doing a pretty large update to that emergency management plan because we are shifting from run, hide, fight to what's called ALICE. And I do have that in your document, and that stands for Lockdown, Inform, Counter, and Evacuate. What we have found, it's nothing against run, hide, fight. There's different ones out there, but we found that this one, it has more developmentally appropriate training for our different levels at the school as we look at that. Even though I know this is a topic that we're very uneasy about, and we had a parent who was very brave tonight to share concerns, but we have our plans for that. We also have reunification if something would happen. That is a very different document, but we really do have to plan for if a building for any reason had to evacuate. Going forward, what our plan is. And then we have our crisis plan. And the crisis plan is something that we probably use more than any other plan because it could be a suicide. It could be an accident. It could be something tragic that happened that it affects the school and how we flex our resources and we provide support going forward. So with our emergency plan, reunification plan, they are going to the principals in April for review, and then we'd like them to go to our leadership teams in May so that the new updated one is ready to go for fall as we go forward for the fall workshop. We've also have where we have trained last summer 6 individuals in Alice. So you always want to start a little small, and we'll be expanding that and training 32 as we go forward. We are very fortunate the Fargo Police Department is participating with us as we go forward with that, so we all are speaking the same language. When we talk about our practices, we have monthly drills. We require a visitor management system in all of our buildings. So if you're not a staff member, we make sure that we are checking you in and out. We do require that our doors are locked on our building during school hours. Now, I will say they're open in the morning when kids come in, but we have had to really strengthen some of those procedures and practices. We meet monthly with the Fargo Police Department to go over safety issues, and I really appreciate Christy and her team. We have a district safety committee, and I just wanted to read that the district safety committee has 4 big areas that we put attention to. We really look at student behaviors. We look at reducing staff and student injuries by students that are escalated. We look at safety procedures. And I might have forgot my 4th one now. And behavior reporting. And so really looking at how we can look at data to help us make decisions as we go forward. And that safety committee is made up of a cross-section of employees across the district that meets. We also have internal monthly meetings with our emergency management coordinator. And Christy, you'll have to help me on this one. I think it's quarterly. We meet with CCUSR. Is that correct? And so CCUSR stands for Cass Clay Unified School Response. And during COVID, it was tabled. And now we've started meeting again. And so it's a large group, but probably one of the best things about it is Christy, along with other law enforcement, are bringing in need-to-know topics to our leadership teams as we go forward. And to me, it's Moorhead, Fargo, West Fargo that have been attending as we go forward. So those are some pieces just to know that it takes all of us for a safety plan as we go forward on that. The other piece that is also is policy. We try to review policy that reflects the safety practices we want to implement. So I'm going to give an example, the threat assessment policy. If we have a concern with whether it's a staff member or a student, whether it's safety to themselves or others, we have a procedure that we follow as we go forward. So I was hoping, and then you guys certainly could ask any questions, but I just wanted to give some information around that.
Any board members have questions at this point? Thank you, Missy, for all the information.
All right, then I'll go ahead and share some of our student support services that we have available to students. And tonight we're primarily looking at those services that might be newer to us, so maybe even new this year, or an expansion from some pilot projects that we started last year, and specifically targeted at that tier 2 and tier 3. So we're not speaking tonight about all of the things that might be happening across all of our grade levels as part of their core instruction, but in cases where we might need some strategic or intensive intervention for particular students. You have in your handout a table, a list of some of these activities that really have been an outcome of the ESSER funds that have been available to us over the last couple of years, as well as a real desire, an appreciated desire by our community to also establish and grow some relationships that we've had with them. So the first one has been around school immunizations. So specifically thinking about the immunizations that are required to students are required to have in order to be in school. October 1st is that deadline every year. And so last year we partnered for the first time with Family Healthcare and their mobile unit. That was new to them. And so for the past 2 years, we've had them the opportunity really for them to visit all of our school campuses to be able to provide immunizations for, the required immunizations for students in order to remain in school as of October 1st. And so you can see the data from the past 2 years. Last year, certainly we were trying to play catch up a bit from the pandemic, and is what was really the catalyst to get that initiated. But then as you can see this year, even a year later, a very similar result. So we were just really happy to partner with them and be able to keep our kids in schools with those required immunizations. Moving on to the positive behavior program, this is one we've talked about over the past handful of years and continues to be something that we have in place in our schools K through 8. We have now, as you can see on the handout itself, we have 10 positive behavior interventionists and 23 positive behavior technicians. I said K through 8, and I apologize because we have just expanded K through 12. So we're up through the high school as well, and you can see that 11 of those positions are ESSER funded positions.
Mabel, I'm just going to ask you to make sure you're muted. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yep, that's all right. Thank you. And then the data that you have on the screen as well as in your appendix is really what happens as a result of the intervention for some kids at the strategic and the intensive level. So ultimately, we're always trying to build those lagging skills and give kids what they need so that we can return them to just core instruction and not needing additional intervention. So you can see over the past couple of years, there has been, the decreased in tier level. So that would be like going from a tier 3 intensive to a tier 2 strategic, or even then back to a tier 1, which is core instruction. You can also see when we've had to increase the tier levels if students have qualified for special education. And because we know behavior can take a long time to shift, right? Behavior for all of us can take some time to reestablish some neurological pathways to shift some old habits. Sometimes we have kids who maintain across the tier and across the grade level. So that gives you a little snapshot over the last couple of years as of last spring for this information. Moving on to the restorative conference facilitators, last year we only had one restorative conference facilitator, which was at Carlton Eielson as kind of our pilot program. What you'll see in the data in the next couple of slides, as well as we're also having a technical issue with the data collection at Carlton. So I will say it's not an accurate description because that information has not been collected as accurately as we had hoped, and something definitely we're working on. But you can see then, even though we only had one facilitator last year, we had a district facilitator who also supported schools. And so when you see numbers from last year, you know that she was making her rounds to help support students and staff members when there was harm that was done. This first slide that we're looking at is what does that caseload look like? So that's a count of students who were involved or working directly with the restorative conference facilitator. From last year to this year, we have a total of 5 this year. And you can see that they're located in all 3 of our all 3 of our middle schools and 2 of our comprehensive high schools. What we also then, we try to do the restorative conference caseloads by referral. So when there has been a situation, facilitators don't respond to every single situation, but usually receive referrals then from administrators and sometimes from counselors to work in terms of their involvement. So you can see where those referrals are occurring across the district. And then in the blue bars, the intentional student interaction. So sometimes there may not be a specific referral, or it could be a follow-up from a specific referral that we have our conference facilitators trying to work directly with students who may benefit from more of a mentor kind of perspective, where that restorative conference facilitator can be that person, or just help support them as they work through some tricky times in middle school and high school, as well as tricky times throughout their life. Moving on to the student wellness and family facilitators, or SWIFTs, as we affectionately refer to them. This has been a program that has been established for a number of years, but thanks to ESSER dollars, we were able to expand after the pandemic. So we are currently up to 12 student wellness family facilitators. This too is a referral-based program. It's also voluntary, so that's not a required involvement, but certainly when we receive referrals from schools, from the principals, from the counselors, many efforts are made to establish those relationships with the students and the families. So you can see over the past 3 years what the new referrals, those that are currently active, and again, it's taking a look at those active cases as of February of each of these 3 years, so trying to compare the same point in time across the 3 years, as well as the number of cases that have been closed as of the end of February. All 12 of our student wellness and family facilitators serve all across our district, and so each year we do a bit of an analysis to determine if we need to make some adjustments on where they're serving, as well as if we're looking to make some modifications in terms of how we provide those services. We also then have been spending a little bit more time talking about where some of our greatest needs are for that placement review. And so you can see what those new referrals look like. If a student has been closed, we consider them a new referral if a month or more has passed since the time of closure. So while we might be duplicating our counts of students at times, typically that happens when more than a month has passed from stabilization. And then this last data slide in terms of the SWIFTs is always one for us to spend some time talking about, requires maybe a little bit of explanation, but we really try to think about the outcome that our students who have been involved in the SWIFT program at any time in their school career, what does that look like in terms of their graduation? And so when you see that cohort zero or that blue bar, those are students who have completed what we would typically expect as a 4-year graduation plan. So they started as a freshman and they graduated as a senior with their cohort. The cohort 1, 2, and 3 then would be they took 1 additional year, 2 additional years, or 3 additional years to reach that graduation. Ultimately, we're thrilled when they graduate, even if it does take some additional time. And so we want to be able to wanted to be able to quantify that as well. The cohort -1 is an early graduate as well, so that's what that is, as well as then that pink bar, which is something that we're also really monitoring, is the number of students who have been part of the program that maybe don't make it to graduation. What we aren't able to capture in this information is any of our students who pursue their GED. So those have been ongoing conversations about how can we also pull that information in, but because we don't capture it within PowerSchool, it's been a little bit more problematic, but we continue to have that conversation.
Yes, if I looked at this graph and say I'm looking at 2021, and so we're looking at a graph that says 45 of the 123 students that we gave services to didn't graduate, at least not yet. Do we know they're all still in our district, or could they have actually moved out of the district and we'll never know if they graduated?
So those 45 would be when they left our district that they chose to withdraw. So they're not in our district anymore, but we wouldn't know if they've enrolled elsewhere to the second part of your question.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Jen, and just real kind of high level, just because we have conversations at the GAC level, impact legislatively as well. Can you just provide a high level difference between kind of the role of the school counselor and then the role of the SWIF as well for the group?
Sure. Yep. As we think about the continuum of supports from our core instruction, when we think about social emotional learning, our counselors are our first providers of that service. They're meeting the needs of all of the students through regular social emotional learning lessons, counseling sessions, whether it's individual or small group, just overall student health and well-being. As we have students who might need a little bit more, sometimes we have an overlap between our SWIFs and our counselors in terms of meeting with students, individual or small group. But then as it becomes more intensive, where we are trying to maybe connect kids to outside services or some additional complexities that might be in place for the family as well. Often we know that when our kids are struggling, there might be some difficulties in the home too. So our SWIFs then are in a position, almost all of them are licensed social workers. So they're in a position that they do multiple home visits to try and work with the family in terms of identifying what those barriers to accessing services might be, and how they can then intervene with not just with the student, but with the family at large to reduce some of those barriers. So again, the SWIFs tend to get involved much more so at that tier 2 strategic, but certainly at that tier 3 intensive level, where our counselors spend the majority of their time working at that core and then overlapping into some of the strategic. We have, oh, I'm sorry.
You had a question, Robin?
Sorry, Robin.
So I'm very supportive of the SWIFT program.
how does this overlap into those students that are on IEPs? Is it separate? Do they get separate services?
Our SWIFT serve our entire school population. So regardless of identification for an individualized education plan, if there is a need that is impeding their access to education, our SWIFTs are connected to all of them. So there isn't, it's not written into the IEP, but it is available for each and all of our students.
That clears it up. It's not written into the IEP.
Correct,
That makes
correct. There are
sense. Okay.
services available to everyone.
Thank you.
So one of the pieces that we did that is newer really since the pandemic is the Connect and Support program. So in a partnership with Together Counseling, this is our second year of being able to offer comprehensive half-hour sessions of kind of low-level clinical services. And so really, this is meant to be addressing some of those stressors that might come about as part of just natural life. It grew out of the pandemic, so as families and staff members might have been experiencing some stressors as it related to the pandemic, we wanted to be able to provide some intervention. But then we recognize, right, we all experience stressors regardless of whether they're pandemic related or whether they're just life related. And that we've been able to continue this service as well for both students and staff across the district. So any of our students and staff are eligible to receive 10 half-hour sessions through Together Counseling that all occur virtually. So you can see what those, the number of students served and the staff served, as well as the number of total sessions that have been available to everybody through the ESSER funds. Also then working with both Together Counseling and Solutions, we have opened our doors. We've expanded that opportunity to open our doors for services that we can't provide with our school staff currently, which is that clinical mental health service. And so through lots of partnerships, and I alluded to two of them actually for this slide, there are many partnerships that we have established across the region that we open up our doors to. And in this case, what happens is when we have a student who has a barrier to accessing those services outside of the school day, if we have space in our buildings and if we can make it work with the student's schedule in order to, especially when they have IEPs, we have to be very mindful of that. When we can make all of those pieces come together and a clinical provider is also available and willing to come into the buildings to serve that student, we're basically providing space within the building so that clinical service can happen on site. And so you can see over the last 3 years what that has looked like in terms of the number of students who have been served at school. Again, this is as of March 22nd. For 2023, although different from the previous slides, the 21 and 22 school years, that's the comprehensive year. So you can see as of March 22nd for 2023, we're at 183, which far exceeds where we were at the end of the past 2 school years. Co-located services, that's where we're in partnership specifically with Solutions and Together Counseling. So we have contracts with them and have their therapists in 9 of our schools. And in those 9 schools, we have committed to 4 billable hours. So if those are 90-minute sessions, or I'm sorry, if those are 60-minute sessions, that would be 4 students total in each of those 9 locations. In some cases, depending on need, sometimes also depending on age, sometimes those sessions aren't hour-long, so we might have maybe 5 or 6 that we can that we're able to fit into those 4 billable hours. But the difference here in the co-located is that the district is funding this, ultimately paying for it. It goes through this family's insurance should they have it, and then the school district through ESSER funds is paying the copay and deductible. The previous slide on the outside mental health services, all of that is paid for by the family. The district just provides the space in those cases. So that's just how they're a little bit different and yet also quite similar. So you can see in terms of students served and student sessions, again, we've had the opportunity, last year was our first year with co-located services in 4 of our buildings, and 2 of them, or 3 of them, I'm sorry, were only second semester. And so this year we have Solutions and Together in 9 of our buildings. So that brings us then a little bit to the challenges. Most of what I think I probably have addressed. Building space can be an issue, and you know that all too well in the work that you do for the school district. Some of our buildings are real full with the day-to-day activities of running a school, and so it can be a little bit tricky, especially when we're bringing in providers that are talking about some pretty sensitive topics that require private space, and so it can be difficult for us in some of those locations. We also know transportation is always an issue, and that's also, while it's a challenge um, for students and families sometimes to get to services outside of school, sometimes it can be a challenge to get the students into the classroom as well if they've missed the bus and things like that. And so we continually try to navigate and talk through what our best option is to ensure that we're able to provide those services to students either in school or to make those connections into the community as well. Wait lists too, and I know that we are a resource-rich community, and we have lots of rural partners who don't have as many options as we do, but also being resource-rich means that we have more people who are also trying to access those resources. So wait lists are a real thing, and we have many of our families who have to wait sometimes upwards of 6 weeks to 2 months before they're able to be seen by a provider. So that can be difficult, trying to think of how we might be able to do some bridging between the Connect and Support program through a half-hour telehealth option until something more stable opens up in terms of whether it's in the school setting or even just out in the community. And then with a lot of the pieces that we've talked about as well, we're a school first, right? And so we're always trying to be thinking about how do we provide these services. We know for some of our students that they're not able to access the academic piece until their mental health gets into a spot that they can. And yet then trying to also find that balance between recognizing that when we provide some of these other services that it does come at a cost of instructional time. So always trying to ensure that we're thinking about it holistically, trying to provide what's right, but also trying to find that right balance with the academic piece as well. And then I just mentioned ESSER funding. So everything that I've shared with you today that has a cost to it, certainly the immunizations doesn't have a cost to the school district, but everything else does. On an annual basis, it costs us about $1.2 million to operate and offer just the pieces that I shared with you today. So most of that, I should say, of that 1.2 million is ESSER funds. And so that becomes okay, we've got one more year of ESSER funds, trying to think through the lens of what will be our next steps then at the end of the next school year as it relates to some of these services. And I know that's a conversation we're having across the board, not just with these services, but trying to think through the next steps of what will be our plan. And so that really does take us into some of the work that we've started around that. We have been working with the Center for Applied Research and Educational Improvement out of the University of Minnesota. They completed an MTSS review this year, and really we got lots of great feedback, and you can see the three main areas that came out of their recommendations were to increase and enhance our Tier 1 core instruction, really focusing on that comprehensive MTSS protocol that includes what we're talking about today, as well as academic interventions, and then continuing to think about how are we going to provide those mental health services beyond the life of ESSER across the strategic and intensive intervention levels. We continue to provide ongoing professional development as it relates to trauma-informed practices, so trying to always tap into our teachers who spend the majority of their time with students to help them to continue to feel equipped and have the skills that they need in order to prevent, to instruct, and to respond when situations happen. We're also taking a look at a variety of job descriptions. So I'll just take the SWIFTs, for example. We have been saying, while this program has been around now for a handful of years, as we look at the ESSER funding ending, are there ways and opportunities that we might rethink the job description of the SWIFT that might be able to absorb at least some portion of what we are currently relying on some contracted services for? And should we do that, then what's coming off the plate? How are we going to find that balance as well? So trying to think about things that we can stop and start as it relates to a variety of job descriptions, including the SWIFTs. our community is just incredible, and I'm just so grateful for all of the partnerships that we have established and continue to have conversations with. What you see in the description there, Fargo Cass Public Health, First Link, mental health providers, the statewide mental health work group, those are all currently active partnerships that we are brainstorming and problem solving and trying to develop some new ideas around as well. So always excited. I know some of you have recently reached out with ideas that you have come across and shared them. I always appreciate that as we continue to think about how we can provide services for each of our students.
Jen, can I ask a question there? You beat me to it because I was going to ask you about this. Well, first of all, you know I'm a big fan of yours, and you've been doing this for a long time, so thank you for your work. In the community collaborations, we're responsible for primarily K-12. What is the continuum of care? And what I'm getting at is there was the police chief had a very startling mental health report that he gave to the city commission 2 weeks ago. What about the collaborations from the school versus the adult?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm addressing your question exactly, so if I don't, please re-articulate. But I think one of the things that our team has spent some time talking about is what we heard at the from Chief Zabolski on the adult side, is a reality for us on the childhood side as well. The services, while we are trying to do a lot with clinical services and maybe those more like the hour-long type appointments and interventions. We have a handful of kids that require a lot more intensive care than what our community is equipped and able to provide for. And I think part of the challenge then at the school level is they do keep coming to school, and so trying to work through. We certainly want them to be with us, but trying to find that balance between again what our skill set and what we can provide as a school setting, and perhaps the needs of the students specifically.
That someone answers my question, but and then also from what Kim Rieger said about working with funding at the state level, I wonder how all of these things are funneled through. Is it some of them are the weighted per pupil formula, some of them just come out of the general formula, and so I don't know. Maybe I'm pontificating here and saying how do we parse that all out? But I think I want everybody to remember that the average cost to educate a student, if it's $10,237, also includes a lot of these other services so they can actually begin to learn. So it's not always about the reading, the writing, and the arithmetic. So hopefully we can have some of those conversations when we're talking about the school funding formula as well.
Sure.
I'm sure you'd be willing to help.
Absolutely. Okay. Please.
I think I understand your question, so I'll just be more direct. Yeah, I think there's an absolute critical shortage of the need for mental and behavioral health services for both adolescent and adults in our community. And until we have availability to a regional behavioral health center that can be accessed by all students, especially our most vulnerable students, to provide the treatment that they need, then we wouldn't be putting schools in a situation like we are today, where we have to piecemeal different pieces together. The legislative solution, it needs to be both short-term and long-term. The short-term solution needs to be until we can get the capacity up in our community, allowing school districts to be able to bill for some of these services, especially for our families that may not have insurance. At this point, we can't. That's why we can't go beyond 4 hours. That's why we can't go beyond initial screening pieces, because we do not have the ability as an entity to be able to bill for services. But the longer term solution needs to be infusing understanding that if schools are going to be looking at the whole child, which we do and we should, then that child development entails treatment. And mental and behavioral health is not a service of K-12 academics. It is a service of treatment that is needed that should be funded by Health and Human Services.
Just the last couple of next steps as well. I fully recognize that what you received today was primarily counts, numbers of students receiving these various services. One of the things that's been a little bit trickier than just as it relates truly to mental health and are the multiple layers of the onion, right? I mean, often we have students who might be receiving many of these services and supports, and trying to really determine a way that we can drill down to say which appear to be having the greatest impact that we continue to truly invest in, and which ones sometimes, right, are more about us as the adults feeling good about, okay, I'm doing something, but does it have the same impact or the same outcome on students? So that is definitely something that we need to continue working on, and identifying the impact that they have on student attendance and behavior and overall academic progress. And then finally, again, just that grant funding. So trying to think, we are in the process of writing 3 separate grants to create an opportunity that will allow for a feeder system for only 4 of our schools in the next 3 years, which is about a $2 million expectation, or a budget is what I should say, if it were to be fully funded. So spending a great deal of time working with our grant writer as well as other partners to identify some other grant funding sources. Probably to your point as well, Robin, to see how we can continue to sustain some of the work that has been started and that we're seeing, at least anecdotally and on a particular student by student case, to be real favorable outcomes for them. So with that, if there are any other questions specifically for me, I'm happy to do my best to respond to them.
Thank you. Thank you all for presenting such a detailed report. Are there other questions from board members? Yes, Greg.
So I noticed page 5 has like the giant table of all these the support services, and then I love a good appendix, and it has information for all of them except the last one, and I don't know if that was like there's no data for targeted case management, or
Oh, thank you. That was a complete oversight on my part. No, we do have the data. I'd be happy to get that out to you. I think I probably got sidetracked and just missed it. I apologize.
no problem. That's the only question I had for that section.
Yeah, just a brief snapshot of targeted case management. That's in partnership with Nexus Path. You can see the buildings that they serve. Each of our targeted case managers, they're employees of Nexus Path, so they have the capability of serving the students on their caseload year round. Really, there's opportunity for support 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, which is also a support that at the school level that we're unable to provide. They work with the students and families. They have anywhere from 12 to 14 approximately students on each of their caseloads, just to kind of give you a general idea of the number that we're talking about. Those students, in order to be eligible for targeted case management, have to be Medicaid eligible, and they also need to have had some contact with the Human Service Zone in terms of child protection.
Any other questions?
I have a broader question.
Sure.
The board's results policy 2 asks for analysis of the information, including a breakdown by student subgroup when appropriate. And I noticed we didn't get any student subgroup breakdown other than grade level in a couple instances. Was that a limitation of the data, or was it something we didn't think was appropriate for the data?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'll be honest, that was real intentional on my part. Really thinking through the lens of these types of services, the importance of them, but also wanting to not present it at all in a shame and blame as well. So recognizing that very often when students are receiving these additional supports, and again, keeping in mind these are additional, not the core instruction, but wanting to be real thoughtful about how we presented that data to recognize they're available to all of our students, and not to criticize any particular group. I think where that information is going to be especially helpful is, again, on the next steps piece as we think about that process to quantify the impact, is then taking a look at which of these supports have the greatest impact and on which subgroups from there as we continue to plan forward. So that really was my thinking behind it, and I don't know if Dr. Gani, if you had more to add to that.
Yeah, I would hope that we would continue on that, because if the purpose of looking at subgroup data, especially by federal or state racial subgroups or free and reduced lunch or IEP or EL students that we normally use, is to look at gaps in equity, that does no good for us when we're looking at those data sets for opt-in or referral-based student support programs. Because then what it does is going to put us as educators in the mindset of saying, are we not serving one group enough? Which then means that we have to then generalize that that group has more needs than someone else. So I think when it comes to opt-in services, like our question should be, who's not getting some of these services that should be? Like, was there a lapse in referrals, or what are things that we could do to that piece? But I think for that reason, like, educational justice means every student should have access to the support services that we provide. It doesn't matter what group that you're part of, so there shouldn't be a gap in that piece.
Thank you.
Did you have your hand up? Yes.
Yep. I'd like to make a motion that the 2022-2023 internal report for monitoring strategic initiative 2 be approved as provided, and accept the superintendent's certification that the strategic 2 result was achieved or reasonable progress has been made.
Second.
Great. Motion by Jim, seconded by Seth. Any discussion? Greg.
Not to be the person who keeps talking about this. So anyway, Dr. Gandhi hinted at our conversation kind of at the outset, as did Missy. I spoke to both of them, I guess, throughout the day, and I guess first I'll thank Missy for the greatly expanded discussion when it comes to the second results policy indicator. I thought that was great. That was thorough. That's what I was hoping to see on the report, and I appreciate that with pretty short notice you were able to provide such a thorough answer. And I think I heard Missy mention it, and it's been a while, so I don't remember if Dr. Gandhi mentioned it as well, that you'd like to add that information to this report. And so I guess as a matter of procedure, I'm wondering if we should, as a board, wait until it gets added to the report for us to, I guess, finalize. So in that vein, to keep Anne Marie happy, I wrote down the actual motion that I'd like to make.
There's a motion on the floor. Are you going to make an amendment?
Well, I'd like to move to postpone the motion to our next board meeting so that we can have the report amended by administration.
I have a question.
Yes,
Or a
Nima.
comment.
Yes.
Before you go. Sorry about the loud music.
Okay, sorry,
I
one
just wanna
second.
s-
One second,
Okay.
Nima. We just need a second, I think, before we can discuss that. So we have a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Motion to postpone the original.
Good.
Okay, hearing none. Correct? Okay, so now we can go back to the original motion and continue our discussion.
The motion would die due to lack of second.
Okay, yes, that's what I meant to say. Go ahead, Nemo.
Okay, so since we are talking about mental health piece, and Dr. Sora mentioned a lot, and I feel bad that I'm not even there because this is one of the topic that I'm really passionate about, and um and and I know that that data does exclude other other diversity, which actually I'm really happy that Dr. Gandhi actually mentioned it, and that's why I was quiet. And I'm glad that we postponed this for the next discussion, because this is actually one of those crucial topic we definitely need to really discuss more on it, because this had a lot of students. For example, I'll give you an example. There are a lot of students from a different diversity, which I work with, but that's not the case. The case, what I'm trying to say is there is EL, other different ethnicities in our community. They really are struggling with mental health in general. For example, when their parent trying to call schools, not the school, but the hospitals, it it takes them a long time for these students to be seen by a doctor or by mental health provider. It takes about 2 months to 3 months before they can even see them. So I just wish that we can really look into this more deeply, because the community that I'm in, like a South Sudanese community, there are kids that are literally committing suicide, and some of them literally do not have that mental health provider that are from a different communities. I'm just saying it, okay? That are in different communities that they can really relate on, and somebody can actually hear them out. There's none. So I just hope that, Dr. Sar and Dr. Gandhi and everybody else, we actually can do something. We can make change in this community and in this school system, to save these kids' lives. And I know that you're doing an amazing job already. And I'm not saying that I'm not seeing it. I'm seeing it, but I just hope that, there are guidelines, different ethnicities, like Dr. Gandhi said, we need to really put them in place so we know exactly where to be able to help them more. So if I went further than what is expected, I apologize. But I do know these are the work that definitely need to be done in our community, so our kids can come to you more, especially the counselor that are in school, so they don't have to feel afraid that nobody's listening to them when there actually is somebody's there is listening to them. I just hope that we can really discuss this, because it's really affecting the academic in general.
Yeah.
Because when you see a kids putting their head down and just really not thinking clearly, it's tough for them to really get the grade that they need and the expectation that needed by the teachers.
Thank you for your
Thank you.
comments, Nemo. I just want to make sure you understand Greg's motion failed due to lack of a second. So we aren't actually planning to discuss that. And I just want to make sure you understand what you're voting on. The current vote would be voting to approve this evening.
Okay, that's fine. But I did mention what I said. If it is, like I said, I have a weak internet where I'm at, so I had to come out on the street. So to just really to pay attention. If it does cut off, just know that this is the reason why. So I just wanted to let you know that this is very crucial, and I apologize. Probably I didn't hear it. If I heard, I would have actually seconded it. Thank you.
Okay. So any further discussion, questions? Okay, so we're voting on Jim's motion, seconded by Seth. Emery, I'll have you call the roll.
Christensen,
Yes.
Clark,
No.
Day, Gullickson,
No.
Holden,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Berkland,
Yes.
Newman.
Yes, motion passes. Okay, thank you. Are we all?
Excuse me, President.
Yes,
Newman.
Seth.
I have to actually leave. I have for another obligation this evening. I just wanted to let you and the rest of the board know that item number 10 on our agenda will not be necessary this evening.
Okay,
So,
excellent.
thanks.
Yes, thank you for letting us know. In that case, maybe we'll breeze on through. I was going to suggest a break, but maybe we'll keep pushing through. Are people okay? Yeah. Okay.
Dr. Newman?
Yes.
Yeah, my internet, I think that you guys voted on something, but just wanted, yeah. So I'm just gonna let it be. So because I can't hear everything, and I apologize.
Okay, the blessings and curse of technology, I suppose.
I know, I
Okay,
apologize.
thank you. No, no
Thank
need
you.
to apologize. That was approved. So we will move on to item B under business, which is the easement approval. This comes to us from our general counsel, Tara Brandner, in memo number 93.
Yep, you have before you an easement with the city of Fargo. Essentially, what the city of Fargo is asking the district for is access to its property that is adjacent to the operations center, which is located down on 40th Avenue South. They are in the process of constructing a storm sewer lift. They will just be crossing our property. The impact will be de minimis at best or at most. So I would ask that you approve the easement.
Thank you, Tara. Jim.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we authorize the execution of the access easement with the city of Fargo as provided in memo number 93.
I will second that.
Okay. Any further discussion or questions? Greg.
Can you define what de minimis means based on context clues? I have a good idea, but could you spell it out for me?
President Newman, Board Member Clark, de minimis essentially means that the impact is so minimal that it cannot be measured.
Thank you.
No, I really didn't know. That's a great phrase I will be hoping to incorporate into my own life.
I now challenge you to work that into a sentence tomorrow in your everyday life. Greg. Okay. Any other questions or discussion? Thank you, Tara. Emery, I'll have you call the roll.
Clark,
Yes.
Day,
Hello?
Day,
Yes.
Gullickson,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Berkland,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Newman.
Yes, motion passes. We'll move on to the third item this evening, which is the 2024-2025 school calendar approval. This is at your desk as memo number 94. This will be presented by Dr. Gross.
Thank you. So at your table and on the screen is a copy of memo 94. The calendar committee has met, and it was a very good group of people who came together, comprised of teachers, parents, students, district office representatives, our FEA president, support staff, and a school board member. We came together over the course, I believe, 3 different meetings in which we looked at survey data of our students, parents, teachers, district staff, and administrators around topics related to the calendar. We looked at state statute, we looked at our contract, and then we looked at some other pieces of information. Did NDSU, Morehead State, Concordia have their calendars ready? What do the co-curricular schedules look like as we look as far ahead as 2024-25, and then used all of that information over the course of multiple meetings to come up with a draft calendar. The calendar committee did come to consensus on a draft, and then that was brought forward, or at least an offer, to our PTA and PTO presidents for me to do a Zoom meeting to share the calendar and then answer any questions. Both of those steps have been completed, so we're ready to bring this to you, to the board. The second page is the draft calendar, and just for to orient a little bit, the different color code that is there. The green days on the calendar are the professional development days that are part of our contract. The gray shaded cells are days where there is no school and teachers would not then be present. The blue, and you'll notice there are two different shades of blue. Those are our student contact days, and the two different colors are semester 1, semester 2, just so you can see how that will play out. The salmon color are our holidays that are required either by statute or by contract. And then the yellow days, there are two of them, are our storm days, which are articulated in EL 14. This calendar also includes 4 days that are shaded in pink, and they have the code EO, or early out. This next school year will be the first year that we actually implement early outs in the Fargo Public Schools, and there are 4 of them in the 23-24 calendar. They are times for where the day will be 2 hours shorter in duration for our students, the same duration for our staff, and our staff then will have additional time for professional learning community time to talk about the curriculum, talk about assessments, and talk about interventions for students. This calendar also then embeds 4 of those early outs. Over on the far right, just for your information, you can see how semester 1, semester 2 is divided by the different months and the number of student contact days are in each of those months. Like I said, the calendar committee did come to consensus and wanted to bring this forward to you for your review, and I could answer any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Gross. Robin?
I would like to move that the 24-25 school calendar be approved as presented.
Second.
Okay, moved by Robin, seconded by Katie. Any discussion? Melissa?
Hi, I just wanted to, I think the calendar should be approved as it's presented, but when I shared it with my peer groups, there was a few questions about what EO meant. So I'm wondering if, as you're moving forward, like I think that the dates should absolutely be affirmed, but maybe if we included on the legend what EO means.
Absolutely. My intent will be, if the board approves this calendar, in both Journey and School Talk, is I will write an article that will be shared with our community to describe the calendar and to better articulate those days.
Great suggestion. Any other questions or comments? Discussion? Okay, and thank you for serving on the calendar committee. Anne Marie, I'll have you call the roll. Oh, Robin, yes?
Just for after-school purposes, for care, I will communicate with you to make sure that we have staff there when school gets out early. But thank you for tacking them on to like school breaks, because then we'll probably have fewer students that will want to leave anyway. But happy to discuss with you. I think Missy and I had already chatted.
Thank you.
Okay, Anne Marie?
Day?
Yes.
Gullickson?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Nelson?
Yes.
Berkland?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Clark?
Yes.
Newman?
Yes, motion passes. Our final item this evening under business is the bond sale protest period certification and resolution. This will be presented by Jackie Gap in memo number 95.
Yes, hi. We began the process of issuing the bonds for the land purchase, and this protest period, it goes for 60 days and has expired. There were no protests filed. Normally, we would also tag this on to an issuance of the bond sale, but we are holding off on that until we've actually closed on the property. So the remaining procedures related to that bond issue will come after that closing has been completed. These just are documents that will be required to be filed.
Makes sense. Jim?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the resolution determining that no protests were filed for the public sale of limited tax school building fund bonds and authorize the administration to file accordingly.
Second.
Seconded by Nikki. Any discussion? Okay, thank you, Jackie. Anne Marie will call the roll.
Gullickson?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Nelson?
Yes.
Berkland?
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Day,
Yes.
Newman.
Yes, motion passes. Okay, we will end our evening by moving on to board reports. Why don't we just go around the room? Melissa, I'll start with you.
Sure. It was a really busy month, so I'll just do some general highlights. We've had a lot of really great productive negotiation sessions and then negotiation committee meetings. Same goes for GAC. And then last week the CEA met and we had a really robust conversation. The fun part of my job, I got to see Tracy's son and the incredible cast at Davies, Chicago. That was really great. And then the next weekend watched Fargo North Spartans win the state boys basketball championship. So a lot of good vibes in March.
Yes, it was a busy month because we didn't have this has been our only meeting, so lots to report. Robin.
Yes, thank you for beating me to that. Go Spartans. I got to watch that. As far as my stuff, let's see here. I attended it has been a month, governance meeting, 2 GAC meetings, some media interviews with legislative stuff, NDSBA school finance webinar, some of those evening ones, calls with NDSBA GAC, I'm in some school meal groups, Chamber Public Policy Committee, and been very busy watching legislative hearings. As far as school stuff goes, I did not join the Discovery PTA last night, but I attended their meeting, and it really reminded me, in middle school, the parent involvement really drops off. And boy, it sure would be nice to encourage parents to stay involved in their PTAs at the middle and high school level, because it was a quiet meeting. But friendly reminder, all those parents out there, it's such a great collaboration between the teachers and the principal, and PTA is just near and dear to my heart. So stay with it, stick with it, everybody.
Thank you for that. Jim.
I attended governance, several negotiation committee meetings, served as an alternate actually at negotiations. We canceled planning for this month, but we'll be back for April, I'm sure.
Thank you for that. Nikki.
With several others, I have attended several negotiations meetings. We actually doubled up last week because of spring break. Governance on the 20th. March 23rd, I attended the Truth About Reading at Fargo South. That was fascinating, heartbreaking, but good information. On March 21st, the National PTA had held their legislative chairs meeting. We just had a month where we came off of going to the Hill and meeting with our senators with our asks for our students and families. That was March 6th and 7th, or 7th and 8th. CEA met last week. We're discussing ideas for the board and or the committee to hopefully engage more with students and or staff. Thank you.
Great. Greg?
Yeah, negotiations is already mentioned. We met quite a few times as a committee and with the FEA in the negotiations process. Those are going as well as I could have hoped, if not even better. GAC met a couple times. I continue to be appreciative of the rest of those committee members because it is such a intense, time-consuming, and frustrating process at times. So I appreciate everyone's effort in that. CEA met last week, and I also attended that documentary viewing.
Great. Thank you for that. Katie.
Yes, since our last school board meeting, I have also attended GAC CEA and planning meetings. I have also been watching the school finance training webinars. On March 9th, I spent a day at Explorer Academy, just wandering the building and observing all of the amazing staff and paras there, working with some of our most vulnerable students. On March 14th, I was actually, I don't know if it's fortunate or unfortunate enough to be at the Senate Bill 2360 hearing. I was in Bismarck, and so I listened to that hearing for a couple hours, and that's one of the bills that would impact the materials in our libraries and our librarians. And so it was really insightful to get to hear both sides kind of arguing that out. On March 11th, I watched Chicago at South. It was awesome. And then on March 23rd, I was also at the documentary, The Truth About Reading. And then I was fortunate that 4 days later, yesterday, I was at Lewis and Clark Elementary School, and I got to see some of the strategies that were used in Truth About Reading actually in action at Lewis and Clark, watching some of the teachers implement UFly. And then I also saw some teachers implementing AVMR, which is like a math intervention, and Catalyst. And I've always been a firm believer in research-based practices, but to actually see them in action and really realize how much time the teachers put into training and implementing and just really getting in the habit of like, these are the strategies that we use. I will say it was really quite fascinating. And if you have not seen Catalyst in action, I would highly, highly recommend it. It's really amazing. Just an amazing, I think it can be like life-changing for teachers and many, many students too. So I just feel so fortunate and proud to have had that opportunity to observe that. That's all I got.
Very cool. Thank you. Namal, don't want to forget about you. Are you still with us?
Yes, I'm still here, and forgive me as well. So on the 7th, I attended the governmental affair, and then also too, I was able to go to Tracy and see her son perform as well. Then on the 21st, I was able to attend the governmental affair. I was supposed to go to one of my to one of my liaison schools, but there was weather issues, so I couldn't make it. So we rescheduled it. The other one that I was able to do was I attended the truth about sorry. I was able to see that screenings at Fargo South, and it was just so amazing. And the fact that there are a lot of people that back in the day couldn't read or write. I mean, just couldn't read in general. That kind of throw back a lot of memory on individual like myself. Since I was a child, I didn't have that luxury or the entitlement to have that kind of education, but at the same time, just seeing the dedication the community is doing to provide for those individuals that who haven't been into the schools, it was really great to see. And I saw Dr. Gandhi in action asking questions to those other panelists, so that was really amazing. So and then also too, I get to see the GAC, the CEA committee, get to attend it, even though I was late because my daughter was sick, but I still made it there to make sure that I hear the rest of the conversation that we're having. Thank you.
Thank you. I will just end quick with a president's report. I just want to make a little more comments. Katie, you mentioned the NDSBA webinar series, and I just want to thank the district for purchasing those for us to attend. I've actually attended all of them that have happened. There's another one tomorrow night. So these are a standing series that occur on Thursday night. And even if you can't tune into them live, you can watch the recorded version later. So far they've done understanding financial reports, school district mill levies and funds, thought of you, Jackie, and budgeting for success. And then tomorrow night is going to be purchasing and bidding for school districts. So maybe not completely germane to us, but I feel like I'm learning a lot. So thank you for that. And then I went to my own child's parent-teacher conferences. 'Tis the season of that already. And thank you so much for the board support for coming to our arts. I attended 3 of the Davies High School musical Chicago. It was outstanding, better than Broadway. And I've had a couple of policy meetings. Governance has met, as been mentioned. I believe that covers it. I just also wanted to say I'm very excited and honored. I was asked to serve as a judge for the Fargo Second Annual Youth Film Festival. This event will be held at the Fargo Theater. It's hosted by First Link, Prairie Public, and Telwell. And this festival accepts short videos on mental health from high school and actually college-age students. And last I checked, they had already received 5 films submitted from Fargo Public School students. So I'm very excited to do that. If anyone is interested, please save the date for April 13th at 7 p.m. at the Fargo Theater. And then no one mentioned, but we all collectively leave for Orlando in this Friday. We are all attending the National School Board Association National Conference. I think it's exciting that all 9 of us can go, and Anne Marie and Dr. Condi. So let's hope we all get there, right? All right.
Depends what's the temperature going to be.
I looked, it's like 85. 85, there. Great question. Okay, with that, I will affirm our next, I was told we don't need number 10, so we'll affirm our next regular meeting date, which is April 11th. I'm sure we'll have a lot to report at that time. It is 7:58. We are adjourned.